the last event that is actually in March because we don't believe that Black history should be relegated to a single month. So on March the 4th, we are hosting our final Black History Month event. We're calling that event, It Starts Here, It Starts Now. And this is an event that is very skills-based and focused on how any organization can start improving their anti-racism working, starting here and starting now. So we brought some flyers that we will leave on the back table. Everyone is welcome. It's a free event. We're going to be presenting a toolkit of race equity tools that you can deploy without any money, without any permission from your supervisor, to actually start moving the work forward right here and right now. So we invite you guys to come and join us for that as well. But today, it is my absolute pleasure to be introducing Mama Shafia. So, Mama Shafia Monroe is a veteran midwife, cultural competency trainer, herbalist, author, and motivational speaker. She is a channeler of the Black Granny midwife and the keeper of cultural healing traditions. Mama Shafia was called to midwifery in the early 70s and shortly thereafter learned of the Granny midwife. She was moved by their spirituality, their link to African birth practices, and their love of community and courage. Mama Shafia has spent 40 years teaching the legacy of 20th century African-American midwives and building organizations and businesses with their history as a foundation for better birth outcomes and community health. Mama Shafia reminded me why I am so excited to be a Black woman when I heard her speak at the Black Mamas Matter Alliance retreat. So it is my absolute pleasure to be able to share this gift with all of y'all, and without further ado, Mama Shafia.
So, you all are too sweet, first of all, and I think I'm going to come down. I'm not that kind of person, like way up here. Is that okay? So I'm Sarah. I just say hey. Okay, I'm sent back up, you all. I'll come down afterwards. Okay. So, I'm just really glad that we're celebrating Black birth traditions. And as a young woman mentioned, whose name I can't remember, my getting into this work really, we talk about uplifting Black women and using Black birth traditions to lift us up, looking at our culture. I think my own experience, this was my mother dying at, when I was 15 years old, and I ran away from home after that and got into what you call your basic teen at-risk behavior. So I wasn't always like this, you all, which is why I love teenagers. I know how we can be. And so I'm reading about infant mortality. I came across Black midwives, and I'm reading about them, and they're all nice, and they're all spiritual, and they're being taught, God's talking to them, and they're fainting in the fields, dreaming of white calves and going back to deliver babies, and they're like these super amazing women, and I wanted to be like them. And because of them, they uplifted me to be where I am today. So I really honored their work. I take it very seriously, and we talk about uplifting us through some Black birth traditions. We have to remember that we are dealing with a lot of negativity right now. We talk about situations like epigenetics, which means that as Black women, even as Black men, Black people, epigenetics meaning that we remember the lynchings of our cousins, the rapes of our sisters and our mothers, the castrations of our cousins. So all that is also part of the epigenetics. And then we have a weatherization. The daily stress, the microaggressions of not being said hello to, of not getting the job we know that we deserve, watching our children in school struggle because of systemic racism. That's the weatherization. And so we have these daily reminders of what our life is like. At the same time, we're uplifted because look who we are, look where we come from. We are Mother Africa. We have such a strong heritage. And the first midwives were Black midwives. And they are shipwrecked and poor that we know of from Genesis, the first part of the Bible. So we have that legacy. So I want you all to remember that even though we have this thing called epigenetics and weatherization, and we're hearing how Black women are dying in childbirth, and how our babies are not living to be born, and how our sons and daughters are being shot unarmed every single day across this nation. Since we came to this country, it has never ended, you all. Still we rise. Still we rise. And so just uplift yourself and know that we have come through and we are getting better. and it is getting better. But knowing our history of Black people around birth is fundamental because I'm excited this is happening. Because so often we hear about, which I'm all for the science, about Black history and Wall Street, all those are great. But I don't often hear about wanting to talk about Black birth traditions, Black midwives, and Black History Month. So for me, this is like we have arrived in that. So thank you for that. So I want to talk about birth. Everyone wants to talk about birth in America, right? Who wants to talk about birth? Okay, so that's good. I'm going to give you the flip side of this. The whole thing about America, right? And I'm an American, but I'm an African woman first. And African women are holistic. And everything goes in a circle. So we talk about birth, it's really not adequate to talk about birth traditions without talking about Black people traditions. You can't get birth traditions without first understanding what the Black midwife did. It won't make sense to you to do things around birth traditions without having a whole full picture. And the piece with birth traditions come from who brought those traditions. I gotta put my hand up for a slide. Does that mean something? A slide? Anyways, so knowing our history as Black women, as Black as healers, is fundamental as we uplift ourselves. So this is the first thing I want to do is just turn to your right and greet the person to your right. So greet the person to your right. Okay, now we're going to turn to the left and greet the person to the left. Then I'm going to say, I'll go, I may, I'll go, I may, I'll go, I may. Thank you. So that's the first thing for our history around birth, the ability to have human contact. Because all of what we're seeing around all the, I don't call it social determinants, I call it systemic racism what it is. The social determinant comes from something. You're not just born in a social situation. It's given to you. And so as Black midwives and as healers, and as a Black community that originated out of Africa in the South, very much it's people contact. Looking at each other in the face, be able to say hello to each other. And that's the first birth tradition that we were introduced to in a birth situation. And how does having your baby how does that uplift Black women? Because having a baby tradition, not today, maybe some of you all, I know my daughter-in-law's here, she had a part of her birth. But what I want to say is that what the Black midwives brought to birth was celebration. Celebration where you have multiple women and even men coming to the birth with glad tidings. It was a blessing to have a baby. It was never a criticism. Even with a teen mom or someone having their 20th or 15th baby, because of course during that time there's large families, the midwife never made birth a negative thing. There was always joy in us. That's the first part we have to talk about. How do we uplift ourselves as Black women? We have to celebrate ourselves and the new life that we're able to bring into the world. We have to celebrate that. And then the other piece that we want to do for celebrating and uplifting ourselves is to see ourselves in a light form, high energy, vibrations that each one of you here brings something to the birth traditions. Some of the things that I want to talk about with the midwives, I've been fortunate, so I don't know if my history, I've been a midwife for 40 years. I've gone to Colombia, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Jamaica, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Morocco. I traveled throughout the United States for over 40 years. If you have seen the book, Listen to Me Good with Miss Smith or Miss Oni Logan, I was very blessed to know them both, to sit at their feet and talk with them. And so what they did around birth traditions really is an essence, not so much what they did. They did do a lot of things, but it was also the energy that we put out as human beings. Again, always humble, always loving, always supportive. So we're talking about women in a time where there was no running water. In the time you had to walk miles to get your midwife, where you had to go to the outhouse or go to the field to go to the back. There were no convenient things. But still, there was a lot more joy for Black women. They uplifted themselves through birth during that time, unlike we're seeing today. Because here we've been conditioned by white America that we're welfare queens, we're having too many babies, but we want dogs instead. Don't bring your baby, why are you having so many? And you know, you don't think that we do it, we do it. It's in the water we drink. It's built into the country right now. Having Black babies is not an honor. You know, it's not an honor. As Black people, we bought into that. We have to step out of that and not buy into that. No matter what, that is not our culture. And that's what keeps us strong. Knowing your culture as Black people, men and women, persons, it's all the same. And so I really want to stress that. And that's why I have spent the time creating programs such as the International Center for Nutritional Childbearing in Portland, Oregon, or creating the nutritional childbearing group in Boston in the 70s, where we were the first group that went through the streets of Roxbury to recruit Black women to have their babies as home as a revolutionary act of social determination, to own ourselves, to define ourselves, and to own our own bodies. And so home birth is a big deal, because we talk about birth tradition for Black folks birthed at home, and they believed in home birth until the White Tower Act, the public health movement, came into the South and said that, oh, you all are killing babies, it's your fault, when in fact it was poverty and Jim Crow was at fault. And so of course our great-grandmothers, you know, not knowing what they knew, they bought into it. And so now we have a whole generation, which is getting better, by the way, but we have so many women in our culture who don't want to have a baby at home. They don't want natural birth. They're still having a hard time breastfeeding. And something that simple is Black birth traditions. You have a slide yet? Oh, they're working on it. I told you to wait. Okay. So being in community and understanding that birth is the last part of the experience. And so looking at, as Black women and as Black people, including our men, finding a way to normalize birth, not just normalize, we talk about what? Physiological birth. We all know that term? So that's the medical term, or the new midwifery term, physiological birth. What does that mean? It means that you believe that the Creator made your body perfect and you can birth without any help from anybody. So the midwife kept you company, she sang you songs, she called your other kids in or your other aunties in, they cooked and they loved you and they celebrated you. And so that is the first thing, to understand that you have to get preconceptional help as uplifting ourselves as Black women. That those traditions are celebrating us as women, you know, loving our breasts, loving our Blackness, loving our hair, loving our butt size, again, at a time where plastic surgery or injections have really made the forefront, people trying to change who they are. And for Black women, we've never been considered the beautiful queen in this country, though we know that we are. We know historically that the head wrap came from one of the Caribbean islands where the women were so pretty with the head wraps, and the white men wanted the Black women so much that the white men told them no more head wraps, which is where the church hat came from. You all know that? They took the hat, the turban down, and a very fancy hat. So we know that we're beautiful. So it's important that what we hear about the Black midwives, they told Black women throughout their life that you are beautiful. And they used African tradition as a way to celebrate this. So during birth, they would beautify you. So you're in labor, the first thing they're gonna do, I don't know if it's uplifting or not, but you're gonna take castor oil, okay? So I think it's uplifting. Everything comes out, you feel clean, stomach flat, you're pregnant. So, so the first thing you're gonna get castor oil. So I know that, I'm not saying you should do that. I also have 7 children. I took castor oil all of my 7. But I'm not saying you should do it. It's, you know, people's bodies are different. But just traditionally, that was the tradition. And the women, they believed and they trusted their midwives. And that's why it was so nice. The midwives were their aunt, their cousin, a close friend, someone they knew. There was a relationship there. Again, when you know someone well and you're pregnant or just having a baby, they're able to tell you the positive strength. That's the form of uplifting. It's also emotional strength. It's not just physiological. It's really all about your emotion and your psyche. So if someone's around you, it's making you feel good and beautiful and powerful and validated, you're more prone for going full term in your pregnancy, having that, you know, that 7-pound baby, and stuff like that. So sorry, lifting me up. So castor is the first thing. And the other thing they did they looked at the stages of pregnancy. So we know we have the early stage, where you're just like 0 to 3 centimeters, or 0 to 5 centimeters. Then you have the active stage, you're from like 5 or 6 to 7. Then you have your what they call transition, contractions coming all the time, which is going to be from like 8 to 10. And you get the chance to get like pushing, so then you push the baby out, and then the baby actually comes up, and then afterbirth comes up. So the Black midwife had traditions for each of those stages that made it different. So the first one is that they made birth normal. So if you were in early labor, unlike today, now I'll even take that back. I know we've gotten better. People aren't going in so soon. But they would just still call the midwife, and she would be with them. But also there was dueling. So it wasn't the word duel like we see today. It was women who were friends of the family or relatives would also be there. So that's why birth was so much fun, because there's a whole bunch of your friends there, eating, hanging out, and having a good time. It wasn't just in a room by yourself with one person, where I hear Jews are exhausted because they were there all by themselves for 24 hours, 2 days, like they're burnt out. The midwife's exhausted, they're a home birth midwife, not enough help. The nurse midwives are having to transfer, or even the OBs. It was very communal. That was the tradition, to bring people together to celebrate and support this woman. So they would just stay with her. And then when the phases got more active, then they would do what they call the fussing. They would come and they would braid her hair, they would oil her hair, they would twist her hair, they would put talcum powder under her breast, and her growing area, under her arms. They would take the Florida water, which is lavender, cloves, and orange water mixed together to rub it down and make the room smell really nice. They would have the men would cut a lot of wood, and so the room was very hot. They also smoked the wood, smoked the house with the wood during that time. They would throw corn husks in the room, or corn silk, to make it smoky. And I have not quite figured out why. I know they used the wood to make the room very hot. They wanted hot. So when we talk about, mother roasting, we did most things. If you do your history, everything you read about, we already did it. It really came from us. Water birth, mother roasting. No one did cold. It was always hot. If y'all got grandmas, like, soak that foot in some hot water, take a hot bath, gargle with hot water and salt. It was always hot, hot, hot. Get the hot water bottle, get the heating pad, right? Get the Bengay, so. So it was always, so hot is something we always do. They heated the room up, and then they would just like fuss over her. Just, can you imagine? Imagine you're in labor, you're not feeling good, and your mother, and your community midwife, and your older cousin, older sisters are all around you, and they're braiding your hair, they're rubbing you, they're rubbing nice things, you're smelling good. In between contractions, they say, you're doing okay. Oh, honey, you're doing good, girl. God's with you. Just hang in there. They normalized it, took the fear out. So that is a birth practice for us to fuss over the laboring woman until she finally says, get off me. By the time she says that, we're at transition now. And then the other thing that the Black midwives did, they definitely believed in upright positions. So if you look at some of the famous documentaries, All My Babies, who's in All My Babies? Know that tradition of getting to bed came after the Towner Act, which is when the public health movement came into the South and told Black midwives that mothers could not squat on the floor anymore. Remember, we came from Africa, everyone's squatting. There's no beds, first of all. Everyone's squatting, and they continued squatting during enslavement. But when the Towner Act came, they told the midwives they had to get in the bed. So it wasn't even our tradition. So they showed that movie. But if you watch Bring the Spirit, they said once those people left, they probably got back on the floor. So very much squatting and kneeling, never laying down, having a baby. And also during that time, they talk a lot about, not being, then we have two roles, to keep you strong, but also to bathe you. So some midwives said mothers cried a lot, and they were making a lot of noise. They would bathe you, oh, come on, honey, you're okay. Rub their back, give them some sassafras tea, cherry bark tea, keep comforting them, keep encouraging, but keep them walking and moving. So there was no laying down. They knew historically from tradition that you kept mothers moving. And also the uplifting part, they want to keep on that theme. Even during enslavement, where women were often raped to have their babies, or they were forced to marry someone to have babies, all about making money off human bodies, even still what the Black midwife did, she was able to go into that area, whether it was a little shack or wherever they had their babies, and uplift that mother. She was that person that brought the traditions from Africa that still made her feel that she was human, that she was important, that she was loved. She tried to protect her. They would try to get I call them the owners, the terrorists. I never call them the masters. Whoever they were, those people, would try to find out if they could do their work for them to allow them to rest. In some plantations, you could get like 3 to 5 days, and others you was right back up. And so we hear people say, well, you know, we used to birth out in the field. They also died out in the field. It was never our tradition as African descent people to go right back to work. If you look at any artifacts of African traditions, it's always an art with breast, pregnancy, baby in the back. Really, women are reverend, even with the oppression, because yes, there's abuse going on all over the world, but still there's a celebration around having babies. And I think that's also the tradition where before you get the birth tradition, you have to first like babies. Because the birth takes a second. What the whole point is what? Is to have a baby, is to have a person, to bring someone to the world. If you don't focus on Latin America, you focus on how long was your labor, was it a water birth, did you tear, and did you encapsulate? Like those are the questions. Not like, you know, how much the baby weigh, how do you feel? You know, I know we're doing the meal trains, I know that movement. But we're not like in your house. Midwives moved in with you. Like they went to your house. I have a client now having a baby. She's due April 2nd. I made a home visit the other day. She said, here's gonna be your room. I said, good, I'm gonna need a bed. So I'm gonna need a bed and food. Put the list of the things that you want. The slides keep leaving. So the other part that they did was the mother would bend down on all fours. It's called like, you might have heard like crack the back. The mother's on all fours. They take the 2 years and push down to help open the pelvic. So this part right here. And that's what I learned with the Afro-Colombians. They do that a lot. They like to move down all fours and push down the back to open up that help the sacrum, coccyx move to help with the baby out. So a lot of physical contact in the spirit of being uplifted. So if we want to uplift, we have to be used to touching each other. Okay, they did a study that I often talk about where babies who were an adoption agency, where the monastery took care of the babies, and they gave them the best formula. They never picked them up. They all had fail to thrive syndrome. So they all died. They didn't gain weight. So we know that it's not just giving a mother an ultrasound or using a Doppler, her peeing in a cup. She still needs physical contact by somebody. And so that should be our job. And that's what the midwives taught around upliftment and Black birth tradition. Very touching, very hug. That's why we looked at each other and said, read each other, touch each other, hug each other, validate our newness. Women birthed out any clothes on. It was hot. The room was hot. There was no shame. They didn't care if you had stretch marks or if you had, you know, extra skin, or if it was just normal. They normalized everything. Everything was always okay. That's why I love them so much. Everybody was always okay. It was always okay. If you have a good grandma, you all, it's always okay, right? You're gonna be okay, baby. And so that's what they did with the pregnant women. So that's a very important part. So some of the reasons for the Black birth tradition was to protect the mind, body, and spirit, particularly in America. Now, Africa is different, but in the United States, where we have the enslavement, and even today with mothers not making the child, but I want to let you all know too, most of us are making it. I don't want to minimize, but I think it's important for me to say today that we're uplifting ourselves. We're not going to die in childbirth. Okay, we're going to own this. We're going to take care of it. We're going to have our babies and raise our children. So many women are afraid to give birth right now because of what we're hearing from the media. There's so much negativity for Black women. It's always something, right? Breast aren't big enough, they're not breastfeeding, babies are born too small, you can't lift the birth. That's part of psychological pressure. You don't even realize it. It's in the back of your head. And it affects all your health and all your psyche, and it affects how you feel about yourself. Like, am I inadequate? You know, my self-esteem is being compromised. So I want to say, as a Black midwife, to put that stuff to the side and figure out, you know, what we can do by regaining our culture. And also, I want to bring in the Black male. We're talking about heterosexual relationships, and I recognize that we have all types of families nowadays. But one thing the Black midwife did, she made the Black man feel respected and involved. And she made sure that he had a role in this. And so when we're having these babies, unless you have a relation and you're with a female, that's one thing. But if we're with men, then these men have to be included in the birth. That is our tradition. Okay, we didn't just birth by ourselves. That's not something we did. Even on the plantation, even during the 1920s, you know, the Black man has been involved. We're not hearing his name enough anymore, but we need him back in the picture because if I'm not going to touch you, then, I think it's going for this though. We go to the very beginning. Okay, so we're about uplifting Black women through traditional birthing practices of the Black community. So Black community to me is the African diaspora. You know, we're all over, as I mentioned, Colombia, Brazil, we're in Finland, we're everywhere. Every time they took African people out of Africa, they dropped them every single place in this world. So we're everywhere. So I'm going to focus a little bit mainly on Africa and the Southern United States. But we do definitely want to use our birthing traditions to keep us happy, to give us our power back, to give us our strength back, to bring our community back, to save our children, you know, to save ourselves. And that's the tradition that to me that's most important. So I'll wait. That worked. A little bit about me. I think the only thing I would say is that I have hobbies. Midwives have hobbies. So so that's a birth tradition that we walk, that we garden. We all, you know, when I talk to the older midwives, I wasn't always a gardener, though my family was. I was told, if you don't grow food, you can't be a real midwife. I found some dirt real quick, threw some seeds in it. I'm a real midwife, I'm gonna grow something. So they definitely gardened, and that was another beautiful tradition. They always brought greens and turnip greens and things like that to the families and to the other midwives. And so if the midwife was missing from a meeting, they would go look for her. So I know it's more difficult because of the gentrification. We're all over the place, we've been displaced. But you know, we have to find at least 2 or 3 people that we can connect with to reestablish what it means to have Black birth traditions. And birth traditions, unless you're in a tribe that is isolated, there was always a community celebration where the elder women would come to you as a laboring woman and walk with you, sing songs to you, and tell the baby, come out now. The ancestors are waiting for you to come out now. And so you weren't just left by yourself, and all the midwives got involved. So very much again communal. And horseback riding, and I love cooking for family and friends. So hopefully you all are also cooking. That's another birth tradition. We use real food. You know, when we talk with the older midwives, they would ask, you know, what are these young people doing? In fact, we read, oh gosh, I can't think of the book, but another Black midwife book came out recently, The Country Ventures. At the end of her book, so the biggest problem is that the young girls don't know how to cook. And so nutrition is very serious. It's not about I have a PhD, I'm in school, or that's, you know, that's the anti-feminist movement. Food is survival, and it's what makes us live. And so we should know how to cook, because that's a tradition. And what the women did, they cooked wholesome food, and they brought it to their for labor and during the postpartum period. And then she had a lot of friends. Okay, so I'll try that if I do the dance again. Okay. So I kind of already said about defining the culture of Black birth. It's a culture, it's not just a birth role. You have to look at preconception, you have to look at relationships, what the midwives did around birth traditions. They did a lot of marriage counseling. So if you all are doing families, you should be talking to the other person, whether it's male or female, talking to that significant other, making they understand what a pregnant person is going through, her emotions, her nausea, her spitting, her peeing all the time, her having mood swings. At the same time, telling the mother of the pregnant person she can't use her pregnancy as a weapon to make her miserable for anybody else. Because again, pregnancy was pride and was not complaining. So one thing for Black women, we were not complainers. We are now. But normally the Black strong woman syndrome, I believe in that a lot, and I embrace that. I'm very serious about that. So if I wasn't strong, I wouldn't be here today. If I was a whiner and weak, I would have gave up 40 years ago when white midwives told me I couldn't run an organization, I couldn't be a midwife, I couldn't get a preceptorship. So we can't allow that. We've always had to struggle in this country. And so, you know, be strong, because that's part of our birth traditions, to be strong in birth, and be strong after the birth, and be strong how we raise our children, and to have an opinion. Subjective stuff, be objective. You know, say what you think is right. If the person doesn't like it, oh well, but just being silent and saying nothing is not working for us. Okay, it worked. So birth traditions, they have an origin. So again, it didn't just spring out of nowhere. It came out of people, years of development as tribes, and then the midwives being called to work, and then they taught it to the family. So birth traditions come from somewhere. They have an origin. They have a purpose. So it's not just I want to feel good or brag that I had a home birth, but there's a purpose that I mentioned them, that you're strong, you're confident, you love yourself, you love your baby, you're going to sacrifice what you have to do to have a healthy baby. That was the purpose of everything that the midwife did. It wasn't just, I want you all just to be in a hot room. We want you to sweat, to get rid of the excess water, to get the baby out. We want you to be hot because that's going to make your bones open up, they said. So there's a purpose to it. And it must be continued. So I'm glad that we're here today because most of us don't know our culture, period, of anything. Never mind birth. We don't know that. I don't know. I watch YouTube and watch Kevin Hart had a Black History Month for children, and just watched it, and I learned like so many things. Our history was kept from us. It's still being kept from us because we only hear about what Ayurvedic medicine. I hear about Chinese medicine. I hear about bone broth and some other stuff, but I don't even know about Black people stuff. And so I'm reading about the Black midwives, and they did, it was called hoof tea. They would take the hoof of a calf, which is really bone broth, and boil it down to it got to a certain point and skim it, and they gave it to mothers who felt weak during their pregnancy, during their labor, and after the baby was born. And then later, that doctors also recommended that in the late 30s. So we had our own bone broth. So it's really up to us to find the history, and we have to continue it by having these kind of forums and making sure that we sit down with our children, our community, our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, wherever you all go, your yoga clubs, and start talking about what are Black birth traditions. So as far as we know, we don't have any. You have to follow other people all the time because our stuff has been hidden, has been eliminated. You can't do it, it's not really possible. The traditions definitely, go back. Okay, hands-on, who does massage here? Okay, don't be shy. You don't have to be a master. You just get some grease, right? Remember back then with Vaseline, petroleum jelly, shea butter, and just grease it. Friend, rejoicing in birth. You know, as I always say, we have people say, I have 7 children, me personally. And I happen to always be in a relationship when I'm pregnant. It's not a judgment, it just happened to be. And I consider myself educated. And all of my friends always said to me, you having another one, Shafia? Looking about birth control pill? I never got a congratulations. So that's how we treat each other. You know, we think we don't, but we do. It's like, oh, I'm praying. Aren't you still in school? Just say congratulations, you all, and get out of the business. You know, congratulations, period. I just had a baby 5 years ago, and I'm pregnant. Girl, congratulations, how can I help? If they plan to keep it, they plan to keep it, then my job is to help them keep it. Not spacing them, wanting that 2-year spacing thing like Africans do, whatever we can't say, it's too late, they already had it. And that's the birth tradition. They're already pregnant. Celebrate mothers. We don't celebrate mothers, you all. We think we do, but we don't. We really don't. Nobody likes mothers here because our PhD means more, getting a house means more, taking that cruise means more. Hoping things can be more, but no. You know, we see how we're the lowest paid. You walk in with your heavy baby seat, no one gives you a chair, and you stand in line with everybody else to eat when you should have been fed the food first. And so we look at what's happening with African descent people who come from Africa, this country. They have a lower mortality rate, and you're aware that they come here, their babies do not die before the age of 1. Compared to African Americans, they have a higher rate of babies not living to be 1, because it's much more support and love for mothering. And when I did tell an African-born person I was pregnant, one got on her knees literally to kiss my hand and said, "You are so blessed." That's how I reverence the mother. For a lot of reasons, but we need to really try to go back because in the South, we did love mothers and we did celebrate that. And then what the birth tradition is making a mother feel beautiful during her pregnancy and during her birth. You know, affirmation. You all do vision boards. I know someone is here. I am. We're doing things on the wall. We're doing all this affirmation, but we don't affirm Black beauty to a pregnant woman who's already feeling sometimes that the whole country is showing other types of beauty. So she needs to hear from us that she's beautiful. And that was a birth tradition. They did that. They literally did that. Read the book called Archaeology of Mothering by Lucretia Wilkie. She told us what the midwives did. In fact, they said the midwives were really carriers of Black beauty tradition out of Africa. Without even knowing it, they still did it. They had the blue bottles, they had the beads on their waist, they would take the coins and pierce the coin, put it on the baby's neck. They would bring certain kind of cosmetics for her. They just kept her beautiful. And then they adorned the mother. They built emotional power. They talk about the African descent tradition. They respected the father, and most importantly, they loved the baby. The whole point of being pregnant, the whole point of having birth tradition is to keep the baby alive. And everything they did around this birth tradition was to uplift her. And even though we may not be enslavement, where we're being beaten, when she needs to be uplifted, with that midwife would walk with the women and try to comfort her for whatever was going on. We need the exact same support today because we're still going to hospitals having a higher rate of poor outcomes, not because there's something wrong with us. We are not genetically inferior. We are very strong people. We live through all the white man's diseases. Native Americans cannot do it, and we're still here. We didn't get smallpox. We survived here. And we need to commend ourselves for that. So we have to love the baby. That's the whole point of being pregnant. But we forget that. Like I said, we get into how to birth, who helped you, what did you do for the center. Okay, so this is kind of redundant, but I'm going to go down to learn how to birth. So birth traditions also teach women or pregnant people how to have babies. And so they don't go to childbirth classes. It's in the family. It's in the song. It's in the conversation. It's being around other women who talk open about their births so the woman knows what to expect. If she doesn't get that, once she gets into labor, then the birth tradition is to teach her how to have a baby. And after that, she's usually pretty good at having a baby. To help improve birth outcomes. So babies aren't getting stuck. They're not coming out the wrong way. They're not coming out too soon. And also to reduce postpartum depression. If you're talking to a mom, loving a mom, rubbing a mom, feeding a mom, that's just like, a background of mental health problems, usually she will not get postpartum depression. I know they changed in Japan. They said for a long time that Japan, they can't really rate women having postpartum depression. I heard they're finding out now that they miscalculated, but it's just common sense. When someone cares about you, loves you, you're going to feel good. So making mothers feel good so they don't get the postpartum depression is one of the purposes of reducing maternal morbidity. Today is bad, but maternity was worse. Women were dying at a much higher rate. So they did the birth traditions to help mothers not hemorrhage, not bleed, not get infection. In the light. So, and also birth brought family together. So we want the family to come. It's all about the family, you all. We are family. All of my sisters and me. Okay, so we're family. And birth is about that. It's not being in a room by yourself in a hospital with a doula and maybe your partner. It's really about bringing the family together. Family supports the baby. Because again, it's all about, where's that baby at? So it's all about the baby. Okay? It's all about the baby. So the family supports the baby. The mother does well as a rule, then the baby does well. And then uplifting Black women, I mentioned that. It's also thanking the Creator. As a rule, there's a lot of spirituality in African traditions. They said that African Americans are the most religious people in the United States of America right now. They did a measure on that. I don't know if they checked, Latino or Native American, but the study said that we're the most religious people. Whether we go to church or not, as a rule, we tend to believe in something. So we brought the spirituality into it. And then also, we taught the importance of having rituals. So some of the rituals I mentioned, castor oil or walking and squatting over a quilt, also using hot water. We talked about during transition, we talked about water birth, histories that Black midwives out of Trinidad and the South always had herbs and hot water and clean rags and putting a lot of water and hot cloths around the vaginal perineum before the baby came out. So we did that way, way long time ago. Again, we never knew it because no one ever told us. So that's what I do. I go find information and bring it to you. And so I think the practice I mentioned too that it's full circle. It has equal parts. You have to see the traditions in every single section. So it should be your young daughter's son. It should be the pregnant person. It should be the person having the baby. And it should be the postpartum. It should be the parenting of the child. So again, it's not just going to be the birth. So again, you have to kind of get out of that birth thing. Look, the birth is fun, you all. Sure, it is fun. It's no fun, maybe, coming the next day, cleaning up the bloody sheets and having to cook, or she like to do that stuff, which I do. You know, it's all about the birth. We're kind of like getting kind of high on that. We got stuck on that since the 70s. We need to kind of move on and bring it back to the full circle. And then Black birth practices are safe for the delivery. So we want to know that by having a Black midwife, living your baby at home, you have a better outcome than being in a foreign place where people don't really understand their culture. So really, we talk about birth traditions, those traditions were in the house, majority. Or the midwives had birth centers. They had their own house. We would go to their house, and they would help you have the baby there. And this just shows, you know, the water birth. So we've always put mothers in water. We've always we put hot cloths on them. We would find water from the pump, or even today, you know, get water. We say, why? We watch this kind of movies where the midwife was always boiling water, or the partner's always boiling water, because they actually use that water. Okay, that water went on her back, it went over her breast, it went in her vaginal area, it went down her thighs, it rubbed her thighs with cloths to help the cramps to go away. So those wasn't just birthing in the water. And okay, so creating traditions. We talk about the blessing way, which I was told that is a Navajo tradition. Not just around birth, the Navajos do it around anytime they move their tribe, they bless that area again before they put their teepees back up again. But for African descent people, particularly out of Africa, there were certain prayers were done, fasting was done, there was slaughtering of animals, and with Africa in particular, it's always a dance, a celebratory dance, but a dance of protection. The dance always means something. People just done dancing. There's always a reason. So there's a lot of dancing around celebrating the laboring woman. In America, we are now trying to call it the baby shower. I'm sorry, the mother shower. We're showering the mother with prayers. And it wasn't about giving her gifts. People prayed for her safety because birth was a life and death thing, which it still is today. Will always be that. That's just how it is. That's life. It is a life and death experience. So they knew that. And so you got the mother and you prayed over her, and you brought the Bible, the Quran, whatever the religious belief was, and you would spend quiet time with her, and you would give her positive stories, and you would anoint her with the oil on her forehead, over her breast, on her stomach, down on her ankles, we drew on her feet, and these were things to help her feel safe in her delivery. And also, and then also we bring things to the mother like money, and I say that again, like money, because mothers need money. They need cash, you all, they really do. That helps them. They can stay home and pay their bills. Pampers are nice too, but cash, sheets, you know, nursing bra with a nightgown, a new quilt, new slippers, anything that's gonna make her life easy. Those are the kind of gifts we bring to mom. This is not about the baby, this is about the mother. And this just shows our foods. I don't know if you all know that we know that black eyed peas came out of Africa, and the okra, and that's the hibiscus, another name for it. That's the tamarind right there. And I think that's the castor oil leaves over here. We have the peanuts. So again, we have our own foods. I eat tofu. I eat everything. I love to eat. I'm an exotic eater. I travel the world. But I know I have my own foods too. And black people's food is very good food. Yams have vitamin A. Sweet potato pies, sweet potatoes have vitamin A. The collard greens, the kale, calcium, zinc, iron. So before black women, by the way, would never get osteoporosis. Are you aware of that? Up until the 1950s, black women had osteoporosis, but we put the vinegar in the greens to help extract the calcium. So we were told that soul food is bad food. It causes diabetes, hypertension. So everyone's eating tempeh. Not against tempeh. And but the point is that it's not our food. And we're the only culture that does not eat our own food. If you don't eat your food, there's a problem. Your food is your culture. You know, Latinos eating their food, Native American eating corn, you know, people doing bone broth, that's not our food either. And so know your culture, know your foods. Our foods are rich with iron, they make healthy babies, they grow healthy children, they help, when you go through your menopause as women or whatever men go through, it helps break that down. So learn your food. There's tons of books you all on the Black diet. And most of the things you have to find, you have to research. You have to really go, I actually collect cookbooks. I just found a cookbook the other day called The Black Skillet. And I have to say this, it's called Old Master Pie, the Old Master Pie. So I have this recipe too. So we have a lot of books that we can find the recipes. This is one thing. Even cooking in a cast iron pot, that's a Black tradition as well. You know, our grandmas all have Black cast iron pot because it holds iron. So learn what our foods are and give those foods to our moms. We eat wet food, you all. We don't eat steak, a baked potato, or tofu square. That's not our food. We eat liquid food because we have liquids, all the vitamins and minerals are in it. And so the mother's eating it, whoever, we're all getting it. Doesn't mean she can't eat it, but we need to be giving her wet food. So you look at Caribbean food, it's a big curry soup, groundnut stew, even down south, my dad would eat this black-eyed peas, and it was always like wet, like, I'm like, Dad, where is all this wet beans flying back and forth? But he didn't know that he's still eating African-style food, because no one told us that we continued that tradition without ever knowing. And when I went to the Ghanaian New Year, they had cornbread, it's called bankupa benchi. You take the cornbread and you make a little ball and you dip it into the soup. So I remember my dad also, Alabama, he always had the cornbread in his hand, dipping it in the okra stew. That's okra stew with bankupa, literally. So I was like, oh my God, I got so excited that it's there, you all. That lineage is there. It's very subtle. You have to be sensitive. You have to look for it. You have to own it. You have to claim it. You have to teach it. Otherwise, you'll be eating something that's not your food. It's one thing to eat because you like it, but not because you don't know who you are. That's totally different. So we're going to uplift ourselves by knowing our foods, our culture, teaching it to other people, but first eating it ourselves. So, again, around traditional birth practice, absolutely should have a Black midwife. There's no way around that. That's number one. So, yeah, we need Black midwives, you all. We already know the statistic. I teach cultural conferences. I teach implicit bias to help provide. I just got to teaching a whole group of OBs the other day at a high level, and good people, they don't know how to do it with us. So we should look among each other. Of course, as human beings, that we can live and work together. But there's nothing wrong doing for self and having your own people serve you. There's nothing wrong with that. We have a right to celebrate our Blackness, our Black midwives, our Black culture, our Black men, our Black women, our Black schools, our Black IPs, our lima beans, milk, all of it, you know? So when I hear people talking about Kifa, I said, Kifa, ain't that buttermilk? Watered down, it is buttermilk, okay? So now I'm like, my house got full of butter, I'm going back to buttermilk. Same thing I saw my dad drink, buttermilk, the cornbread. So if you have any folks from down south, please go find them in the culture. So Black midwives, Black doulas, Black childbirth educators, Black midwives and Black doulas and Black, it cannot be competitive. The doula is not the, okay, you might want to be, but you ain't. So you have to be humble. You didn't take the training. I can't say I can do 1,000 births. If I have not learned the anatomy of uterus and cervical and basement and RH negative, I have to really just be humble and teach about the advocate, but more so, the Black midwife and the Black doula, historically, they work well together. Remember, had big families, and those aunts were there. So they knew the midwife, and they respected the midwife, and they worked well with us. We always had doulas, you all. It was called Big Mama. It was called Auntie Lou. It was called Cousin Tina. You know, and sometimes it was called Bubba. Our male cousin also serving up blood. We have plenty of Black men trace, but it was not competitive. We knew our role. We were there to help the midwife, helping our family member, and it was a very good team. So we want to go back to that approach. That is a birth tradition. The hot water, if the woman's partner was in the field or hanging out on the basketball field, not showing what he's supposed to, they would go get his hat, And they put the hat on the mother's head. Because they said the sweat of the hat of the man would have pheromones that we know about and on her head. The smell and the sweat of his hat made her have her baby. So that is the tradition, is to go get the hat, if it's a heterosexual couple, to get the hat of that person who's the father, not the boy, has to be the biological father, and put the hat on the mom's head. And also, midwives would certain types of, I'll say potions, like they would get like a piece of his hair or a piece of his string, and they would also put it under the bed. So, because they wanted to make sure that he wasn't there physically, his energy was there. And the mother was aware of it. Most moms said they felt really good wearing the hat of their baby's father. It made them feel close, like he cared. So that's also the male energy we talk about. Birthing at home is controversial, but we really should be birthing our babies at home. I'm going to be opinionated, remember? I'm going to be subjective. That is subjective? No, I'm subjective. Thank you. So, talking about home birth midwife, of course, if you have medical problems, of course, don't have your baby at home. But we're talking about Black birth traditions. That's the topic. Talking about Black History Month. We historically have always birthed our babies at home. So we need to try to go back to that if you can, because there's so many advantages to it. Doesn't matter if you're in a cathedral project, if you're in a hotel, if you're in the back of your car, it doesn't matter. And I remember being in Boston, I told he was a Black OB. I said, I'm going to have my baby at home. Well, I told him I'm going to have the baby at home with other family members. He said, well, how do you have the baby at home? What, there's no heat? I said, when there's not heat and she had the baby in the hospital, she's still going back to the cold house. So why not just get some resources to warm the house as opposed to saying you have the baby in the hospital, then you go back to your cold house. So birthing at home and then squatting. So I know we have the squat bar, and if you want to have an epidural, that is your choice. But again, we talk about uplifting ourselves with Black birth traditions where women were strong, they were not afraid of birth. Their families came around and reinforced normalcy for them in physiological birth. They had trust of their family, their trust was there, and they knew that everyone around them birthed the same way. So if I have a home birth, I'm the weirdo on my street, as opposed to everybody birthed at home. With the hospital, he was the weirdo on the street. So we want to normalize this again. And then this just shows human touch. And so now, I love it, right? Now everything's appropriate. Inappropriate touch, can't touch anybody, right? Can't touch nobody. That's inappropriate. Like, okay. Before, I don't know how that happened, because before everybody touched my stomach, it was never offensive. So that's a learned behavior. We're taught that people shouldn't do that, it's wrong. Some cultures, you touch the mother's stomach and they think you are negative. They really put bad energy in the baby, but if it's your sister, your friend, but we're very we're very offended by that. So it's very hard to talk about human touch when our society has eradicated physical contact. You can't touch no one's kids, you can't touch nobody. So that's causing a problem, because then we're acting out in other kind of ways, having sex early, having sex unprotected, because, not quite sure what's going on with ourselves. So we want to get back to human touch. So that means we have to ask first and teach you that if it's just your friend, if you touch your uterus, it's not offensive. Because now, to me, it's just gone too far. I can't do my job. Oh my God, you're pregnant, oh, baby. That was inappropriate, yeah. So we have to do what these women are doing. And also, too, she has her baby. I love this picture because she's holding her baby. You don't have to have children to do Black birth traditions. But if you do have children, it just shows that this woman's in labor, this person's touching her stomach, but she's also holding the baby to give this woman the whole point that, you know what, when you're done, you're going to have what I have, a baby. So it's a very important message that we bring our children and our babies to events so we can begin to see babies. Right now, we are delaying our pregnancy for many reasons. Economics, can't find the right person, whatever the case is going to be. So we're getting pregnant later and later. And that means that a lot of us have never seen a baby because, our siblings have not had a baby, my cousin hasn't had a baby. So it just makes it more difficult about the birth traditions that we taught how to care for a baby. Because the mother looked to you to show, how do I wrap my baby? How do I change my baby? How to take care of the cord? How to wrap my baby's, vaginal parts, or rub the penis, if it's circumcised, uncircumcised. These are all things that are part of birth traditions within our community that we're losing because we're not around anyone who's doing it, which is not a good thing, by the way. You know, try to Google. So try to find people who have experience. I know there's some midwives here, some parents are here, some doulas are in here, there's some medical people here. Find people who know, who can show you, and then you take the science, then you're good to go. And this is showing when the mother's in labor, you can put the lapa, which is a wrap around the, take the skirt up or take the head wrap off, and you put it under to hold the baby in place for her. You can like hold a way to help her. So that was something that a lot of our traditions use a lot of cloth. So we're like cloth people, right? Cloth in the head, wrap the skirt, wrap the in the back. So this one to show that, to be creative in how you provide support for the mothers. So I'm in New Orleans visiting, I think I was going to do a training down there. And so I call myself a spiritual person. So I walked by the Goodwill store in New Orleans, or a secondhand store. And someone said, go in. So I went in, but I didn't see anything. So I left. But then they said, go back in again. So I went back a second time. And I saw this picture. And so I had the picture in my house for a long time. And then one day I looked in the back. This is Maria Laval. You hear of her? She's actually a high priestess voodoo at New Orleans, who was a healer. You heard some stuff? Yeah. So I'm very excited that she called of the fan, of our head wraps, of the herbs, the love potion, the sacrifice of chicken, whatever your belief is, a lot of birth traditions. And she was very well known. You can look her up. She did a lot of healing in New Orleans mainly around reducing stress, but also around relationship problems and people who would be discriminated against with losing jobs. She would do things to help them get back out of poverty. So this one to put that in there because we're talking about uplifting Black women through birthing practices. It is a psychological thing. First of all, in your mind, you have to feel high up. We feel high up now a little bit, you all? Are we uplifting? Okay, so uplifting ourselves, and it's also economic. You know, having the resources to live quality of life. So finding out how we're going to do that. It's also creating the community. So these are things that we have the problem with right now in the Black community. Realistically, our community has been broken up. And so I have to come two neighborhoods to find another person who thinks like me. As before I could walk out the door, and my whole street had a bunch of folks who probably at least 10 thought like me. So it's making it more difficult, but we still have to find a way. It can't be a Facebook group, you all. Okay, you can't be texting. You can't be texting your client. You can't be texting your friend how to babysit. You know, you can't watch baby over your Facebook. So I'm on social media big time. Facebook, Instagram, all of it. But it has a role. We still need the human contact. We need the eye contact. You have to smell birth, okay? You have to smell that mother. You don't know what she's going through. She can lie on text. I'm doing good, the baby's coming out. You call her, if you hear a voice say, oh, mother, Shafia. Oh, there's something going on, you get over there. Text can't tell me that, okay? So we want to bring ourselves back to human behavior. And I'm flying today to get here. We have the free shows, and I don't know the name of it, but it's about technology. So it's all of us who are using apps and what are those things called? Tablets. World Health Organization said that it's causing mental health. They're showing brain waves in the brain that create plaques similar to Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to see people at 30 they're saying. So MIT was on there, I respect. World Health Organization was on there, and several other people doing studies. So we have to go back to make your child sit down. Okay, that's our culture too. Get your butt down. I'll tell you when you get up. I have seven children. I went to birth with all of my kids. People say, oh, Mama Shafia, I want to be a midwife, I have kids, what should I do? Like, raise your child correctly. It's not that your child can't play, but in our tradition, children respect the elders. When you sit at the elders, be quiet, you learn. You just can't run around, you miss it. Listen to old grandma, I know you're bored, but sit there for a minute. They can sit for a minute. Our kids can sit, and we were raised that way. Because of that, we have Tuskegee. We have spelling. We have our success because people were disciplined. They worked hard. We children had a work ethic. Now a child can do anything they want. If you say no, they freak out. It has increased the suicide rate. Our children are emotionally weak. You can't say anything. They just break. And again, that society has done that. So we have to be careful how we're raising our children. And for the Black birth condition, whether it's Africa, Trinidad, New Orleans, we have a role. We have a hierarchy in our family, which is that the elders come first. Big Mama, Baba, Uncle Baba, they're elders. Listen to them, you respect them. You don't talk over them. You don't interrupt them. This is an emergency. You can sit down for 3 minutes and wait. I'm not going to give you my phone. I'm going to get a crayon and some paper. They're saying that our kids can't have imagination anymore because they're used to just playing the game. They can't think. They're losing memory. So our Black community does not need that, you guys. We got enough issues going on. We do not need any kids who can't remember. We're in a crisis. Know your shit, excuse the expression, remember what's happening, know your address, know how to help out Mama Shafia. Put the game down, look up. You know, look up. Look, so you all recognize how this. We're all doing it. And we really have to, you know, I believe in genocide, you all. I know about Tuskegee, and that's just one, there's so many studies. The mistakes they did to send HIV blood to Africa, I have not forgiven them for that. The fact that Africa is the biggest, freest laboratory in the world, we don't protect it, and the government itself is selling out. Okay, we have things happening every day, so wake up. Wake up. I don't care what you think history, because we have enough documentation to show that this country is still not putting us where we should be as human beings, which is why we have a high incarceration rate, why Black people are dying 3-4 times the white babies are still dying before age 1, not because of gender theory. So put the game down, make the child learn, educate them, let them have fun, bring them to the park, put them in, swing them back and forth, give them organic food, teach them to be a viable society like George Washington Carver, Harriet Tubman, Michelle Obama, also a very strict upbringing, by the way. Her parents are on her butt, so you see how she grew up. So we need to add that, because we gotta go to a birth, like there's a crisis going on, my kids up there, sit down. I have to get to that thing. You cannot run that without jumping in there. That begins at the breast, you all. You raise your kids at your tit, literally. And I'm not bragging. I got 7 kids. I got a car sent to me for my daughter. I got a diamond. I get anything I want. You tell them very early. When they work for a nickel, I get petty. I'm telling you, honestly, got truth. You have to brainwash them early. Otherwise, they won't do shit. You know that, right? They don't call you. They're useless. So I'm spoiled. You all know I did the Black Midwives Hills Conference like for 15 years, or whatever years it was. My 7 kids fly every single year, and they work for free. They're programmed that way. They grew up at birth. I mean, I was a midwife at 17. I had my first baby at 21. They grew up at birth. They grew up on my back at 6 weeks of me catching the baby. It's in their DNA. And I remind them that when I do births, we're saving the world, and they're helping me. So it's not a birth. I don't apologize. Honey, I gotta go to a birth. No, we're gonna go save the world. You need to stay here and watch them. I'll be back. And I remember my story. I had to go to a birth. Now, this is my years later, I'll confess. I don't live with any kids in the house under the age of 13. But I think my son was 10. I could not find anybody to watch them. And so I woke him up. I said, no, so-and-so is pregnant. She's in labor. And poor child, I was talking like an adult. I don't know what to do. He said to me, here's my son, let's just pray, and you go do the birth, and we'll be okay. So I got to the birth, the woman had a baby like that. I mean, that's God, just came out, no bleeding, she said, go back home. So it worked out well. But the fact that he thought that way, and he was raised that way, it wasn't like, I'm gonna call the cops to believe me, for neglect. And I'm gonna say that you hit me, okay? They're doing that now too. So I feel sorry for you all. I do. I feel very bad for you. Your kids America has told you how to raise your kids. So they can arrest your kids and then charge you for the phone call. And that's the truth. You can't do anything with them. How can you raise them? You can't touch them. I'm not saying tie them up. I'm not talking about post-traumatic stress and enslaved child. I'm talking about Black Black parenting skills that has to do with Black birth traditions. If you're at birth, the tradition of your child can help you, if you need them to help you. So I'll move on from that. My kids are grown, I'm done. I have grandkids though. Is that it, the last one? Oh, okay. So now we have prayer for touch. So you don't have to pray over the mother out loud, but the tradition is that we are spiritual people. And so normally the midwives did pray before they came. They said our Father's who art in heaven prayer. They took showers. They did things to get themselves ready to receive new life and to be there. And so you can pray over the mother in your mind, or you can pray out loud with her. That's also part of our traditions. I think there's only one more. Oh, so mother to mother. So I'm not going to do a lot on postpartum care, but birth traditions have to move into the postpartum care. Again, to talk only about the baby coming into the world and then we leave the mother hanging is ineffective and irresponsible, which is why we have what we're calling the fourth trimester, right? You all heard of that? It's the fourth trimester means that the United States wants to find a way to validate the postpartum experience. And the only way that we can do that is to take pregnancies. We call it the fourth trimester. As opposed to, we call it the postpartum period, we call it mothering the mother, we call it celebrating. The mainstream is calling it the fourth trimester. If you Google it, you'll see it coming up. So we want to mother the mother with spirituality, ritual, and tradition in the birth, but also carry that over into the postpartum period. Because birth tradition, like I said, the other slide said it's equal part. One part, no part can be by itself. There's no standalone. There's no standalone. We're holistic people. We're a village. It's a circle, and that's all has to go together to be effective. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And so the mother is encouraged in ritual 1 to move around and to be confident. So build the confidence for the mother. 2, she gets her castor oil and she gets massages while she's in labor with oil, with whatever. Now we say shea butter, argan oil. It can be herbs in the oil, but she should go out and get a full body massage while she is in labor. It's going to relax her, get things to open up. It's going to also help to connect her own body so she can breastfeed successfully and feel connected. So she's bonding before her baby's born. Birth did take place at home as a birth tradition. The mother squats or kneels to birth and hot cloth upon the vagina. And so when we have babies in the hospital, we put the ice pack there. We take the ice pack out of the refrigerator and freeze the sanitary napkin and all that kind of stuff. Normally, that's not what we do. That's not what I've never done that. So it's always going to be a warm cloth. But that's my tradition. We're going to get a warm cloth. And every mother I know loves it. Like, oh my God, I wish my doctor had known that. I wish the nurse had known this. This feels way better. So you want to bring blood to that area. So putting a warm cloth down, and if she's shy, you can warm the cloth up. She can do it herself. The mother's fussed over. You can use Florida water or rose water. You can get any kind of water, put lavender petals in it or rosemary. You let it sit maybe about 4 or 5 days, and then you strain it really good. And then when she's in labor, you're going to massage with that smell. There's different reasons for that. The pomade is more like hair oil powder because everyone was hot and sticky, so the talcum powder helped to keep her body from sticking with that 100-degree Mississippi heat in August. I think there's one more. Okay, so some of the resources, I'm coming to a close, is the Archaeology of Mothering. It's a good book to get. She is an archaeologist who was pregnant, and her professor told her there was a midwife who they found remains. Her name was Lucretia Perryman. She's from Mobile, Alabama. And I tell some sorry her that Lucretia Perryman, my friend's name is Alice Mae Perryman from Mobile, Alabama, as I claimed her. Mother Wit is another good book to read. Only Logan, Why Not Me? These books are old. You might not think they have information. What you're looking for is the culture. Looking at how they fought and what they did in their daily life. Not much the birth. It's what they did when you're not in labor. How they treated people, how they helped people, what they talked about, how they held small children, how they talked to the elders. That's all part of the birth tradition. When you do all that, that goes into birth. You're going to be a good provider and a experience. And then the African American midwife, also really good. Excuse me. Folks get born. And then if you have not seen it, you can bring it in the spirit. It's the first documentary done by African American documentarists. You may not hear about it a lot because people don't really talk about it, but it's the most amazing documentary that's out, literally. And Alicia Rashad is the narrator, and it talks about midwives coming from Africa as enslaved people. So when they went to Africa, you all, there were no slaves, okay? There were people doing things. And if a tribe sold somebody to the colonists, they had no idea that slavery was that kind of slavery. Because around the world, you could get married and you were still a person. You could also work your way out of enslavement. So they had no idea it was going to be like this. So this documentary talks about how the midwives were captured and brought here. And so the reason why we know this information is because they passed this information to their daughter, who told their daughter, who told their son. So I'm able to stand here today to give this information. This is accurate information. This is not made up. This is 40 years of my traveling, reading, studying, oral history. I'm an expert at what I talk about, what I know. And so I want to encourage you all to really seek information out. Like I said, it changed my life, you know, being a teenager with issues, even what these women did for Black people and for humanity, all people. They help everybody with their birth traditions. We're focusing on Black History Month. And then deadly delivery with Amnesty International. This talks about the maternal mortality rate. I didn't want to talk about that. We're talking about uplifting ourselves. So we uplift ourselves by self-love, you all. More dancing, so stand up with Disney music. And I believe we are at the end of this. No more slides. Thank you all. Thank you. So please, if you all have some questions, don't be shy.
We have time for a few questions, so please raise your hand and I can bring the mic over to you.
Can I come down now?
Let's go ahead and over here.
Hello. I just want to give thanks. I'm an Indigenous sister here in solidarity with my Black folks, so I just want to give thanks for Black and Brown solidarity. This is for talking about upliftment. I kind of wanted to know historically or traditionally when women went through abortions, would their midwives hold space and uplift them through that?
Absolutely. Midwives have always done abortions around the world. In particular, talk about Black women who were pregnant and being raped to sell their children. Many did not want their babies. Well, in fact, some even killed their own babies. They smothered them immediately at birth. So there are herbs that midwives knew, and mainly they use herbs. Some women, of course, they use something. Well, they use herbs, and they supported women's choices. Not all midwives, but tons did. You would come to her and say, I'm pregnant, I don't want it. What should I do? And she told them, and she would help them. And I want to say, with our training, the post-op doula birth companion training, we support women who have had abortion because it's still postpartum experience for them. They get neglected. They have their breasts get filled with milk. They feel cramping. They get postpartum blues, and to be by themselves is cruel. So definitely, we want those women to know with my training that happened. They should call me. We'll wrap their breasts. We still wrap their stomach. We help them because that's a hard decision. To do that means there's something going on and no one can judge that, but we want them to get support. So the midwives, again, they're older women, they've been through the mill, very non-judgmental, and as a group, very supportive. Great question, thank you.
So I wanted to know, because placental encapsulating and
You mentioned
placenta is very popular now. A lot of people are talking about it, and there's kind of mixed opinions about it. I wanted to know, is there a African origin to that, or is this just some new shit you make?
We made up. Well, I'll say this, there's not a real strong history of us eating our placentas. So a couple of tribes do like a bite. I always say, if you want to get down with the placenta, then eat that one. Don't be trying to be all neat and make a little peel. Eat it, take a bite, be tribal, eat it, chew it, and swallow it. Otherwise, you're great, you're faking, right? But I'm glad you brought that up. So because that's what, but what the postpartum tradition around that was actually to bury it so many feet and to put a stone over it to keep wild animals out. There's two beliefs. I talked to one from Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. They bury it, and when they come out 5 months later, 3 months later, they bring the baby, and they lay the baby down on it to know where it's at, to ground them, and to teach them to be humble. When people get sick older, they go back there. So normally it was buried and people knew where it was, and they made sure that, because always people believe in, negative forces. You don't want someone to know where it was who of your community tribe had negative energy. So, but yeah, we didn't eat it. Every now and then they put it on the face for bad skin. And I know, so it's not really our tradition. It's more of a, it's not a bad thing to do it, but it's not an African tradition. You're welcome.
Hi. My question is if you can talk to us anything about naming traditions. I think another way in which Black women are constantly shamed as mothers are those magical ways in which, and original ways in which a lot of moms choose to name their Black children. And so I don't know if you can speak at all around any naming traditions that you know about. Yeah, naming of the baby.
Like the naming ceremony?
Sure.
That's a very broad topic. I mean, it depends, we are also tribal. Like my husband's family is from Mississippi, they all went to Chicago. My family's from Mobile, they all went to Boston. We migrated, and remember, they brought different tribes from Africa who, though we didn't know our language, and we were separated on purpose, they still form conclaves. So the question about names, the names mean different things. Some families always name it after their mother or a living relative. We went through the 60s where it was an African name, and then we went through, it was the boyfriend and husband or girlfriend's name mixed together. So we're creative. We wear bright colors, so no telling. But I do want to say this. I think the other important tradition we need to know is to announce our baby. I know that we're having the ultrasounds now, and we know what the baby is ahead of time, which is their choice. But it's not like before where once the baby is born, the baby had a baptism or a naming ceremony. It makes the community be responsible for the baby. When you invite me over to see a 7-day-old baby for a naming ceremony, it means that you're trusting me to be responsible, to be an elder, to be an auntie, to be a big mama, to be an uncle to that baby. And not just, I see it one day in the school, or I have a baby, casual. We didn't do that. There's always a ritual to celebrate, welcome the baby, and to protect the baby. So the name part would be told there. They would often get the name out. Also, they didn't always name the baby on the first day, and also had a fake name. Sometimes the name that, so if any negative, voodoo, witches, whatever people believe in, they didn't get to say the real name until it got to be one, just in case. Especially moms who lost other babies, they would definitely not use the real name in the front until the baby got past age 1. Did I answer your question?
Other questions? Raise your hand high, don't be shy.
I've been getting a lot of clients asking about lotus birds, and I think they're very beautiful, but I have not seen, do you know if there are any connections to any African traditions about separating the baby and the placenta, I suppose?
I actually don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have not heard. I'm sure that, I'm just going to say, if people had used their teeth historically to kind of use a reed or something, there might be what wasn't done so quickly, immediately cut. They might have gave the baby a chance to go find what they needed, just because that's just life. They had to go get it. And then that might have gave more of a delayed experience, but not so much actually putting herbs and carrying it around. That I've not heard of. But again, good question. Thank you.
Other questions for Mama Shafia or comments?
Gita?
So I have a question, and, oh, sorry, there's a hand back there.
My comment is, I just wanted to let you know how empowered I feel, but I also feel cheated. I had a homework with my last starter, and I didn't get all of that. And so I was talking to my friend, and I'm like, I feel cheated. Like, I need to have another baby so I can experience all of that. And I also told my girl right here, she's studying to be a midwife, and I said, you have no excuses not to be when you start doing birth, that you have to do all of this because it just brings out a part of you as a woman, as a mother, as a just to empower you to know that you're doing the best thing for your baby, what's right. You know, and it also brings back your confidence. I work with a lot of young women who don't have confidence. You know, they get pregnant, they're like, I'm getting F girl, I'm getting this. I'm like, well, you haven't even thought about like other options. And they're like, nope, my cousin said this, and I'm doing that. So I just feel so empowered and just like, you know, thinking about just being live and experiencing it. Now, next time around, I know some things.
Thank you for sharing that. And home birth is good, and all kind of home births, but again, if you're practicing Black birth traditions, like you said, certain things should be happening in the house, you know, and certain things should be happening after the midwife comes back. You know, she's gonna sleep with you, she's gonna change the sheet, you're gonna get rubbed every single day, you're gonna take a shower every day. I know people are into like they're not washing anymore, but just because we don't wash the baby, don't mean you're not supposed to wash. So we still want, you know, in the tradition of Africa, water is very important, especially down south. So mothers getting a shower, getting certain kind of foods, those kind of things. Yeah, Mana, I should do that.
So I'm thinking about the fact that we definitely need and want more Black midwives. I'm thinking about, as you know, there's a dearth of all midwives of color, including Black midwives who are doing home birth. And so I wanted to get your thoughts about, so how do we support up and coming Black midwives? And I would think ideally we want to midwives be trained by other Black midwives, but there's a very limited number of that happening and existing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, again, supporting student midwives.
Yes, did you all have a question? Okay, so I did so just to let you all know, please join my e-newsletter first of all. Go to shafimo.com and you can put your name in, you'll get a nice little booklet on herbs. I also do a weekly Facebook Live called The Weekly Chat with Birth Workers. And so last week, Laura, to your question, someone said to me, a Black woman, I can't find any African American midwifery schools. And so there really aren't any, so you're not going to find any. And so I told her that your question that you all, sisters here, you're talking to, well, we have to suck it up. Okay, go work with whoever you got to work with to get the information. We don't have that luck. We can't hold back. Doesn't mean that you don't fight for justice. If you're in a situation, if you're at Harvard or BU, or you might be in midwifery school or nursing school, whatever, there's issues going on, you should challenge it. But we cannot pull back and not learn the information. Otherwise, we're not going to grow. We have to make the sacrifice. And my example was the little Black girls who were 6 years old who went to Mississippi to desegregate the school. These were kids, right? Who sucked it up, and their parents risked their children's life to be the first Black child in Mississippi during that time to go to all-white school. So if they can do it, we definitely can go work with a white midwife, a white doctor, or whatever it needs to be, because you're going to get information, get your license, bring it back to the community, you're going to flip it, and make it a Black program. So that's how we do it. I went to a white program. Well, I went by all Black midwives. I was fortunate. But I still had belonged to a white organization, and it was fine. You know, it is what it is. We're white America, you guys. We're 13%. So that's it. We're small. And by the way, have babies, you guys. We need some more Black people. We really do. I teach cultural competency, and look at the census. And so we're not really growing that much. And also, while I'm at, I know it's Black History Month, but also Native Americans are not growing at all. They're not even moving. So we do need Black people to have Black babies. So if you need artificial insemination, pay somebody, find somebody. If you are heterosexual, go get somebody, come get his act together. We do need, you know, and that's just my piece. Anybody else before I come off the stage? Any doctors here, or nurses, midwives, or questions? Okay. Good.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a nurse midwife. And I wanted to know what do you see we can do in the hospital setting? Because many of our Black women are still working in the hospital. To welcome these traditions, because I think sometimes folks don't want to be the odd one or the weirdo, as you said. But I also don't want to be in the position of co-opting traditions because I'm not a Black person. So how do I welcome those things without co-opting them?
That's a good question. I think that what people can do who aren't Black is give them information. You know, so whether you're going to collect the books that we mentioned and suggest that they read it, or refer them to some Saga who's ever here to say that, you know, here's some things happening in your community. You don't mind some suggestions I heard about for Black and white. She's saying this, I'm just sharing information. I mean, that's fair. That's because we have to empower people, and often they've never heard about it. And you'll be the only person. Also, my friend who's a Black OB said that what doctors can do of every race is to write, get a doula on a prescription pad for Black women, because they'll follow it that way. So if you say it as a physician or a nurse midwife, they're going to follow it. We're still trying to get Black women to understand that they can't have a Black nurse midwife, at least bring, if they can, a Black doula. And so, Laura, your question also, just want to make sure that, you know, just same thing, you know, I already know who you are, what you do, but, you know, just keep doing it, you know, and I would say share your culture too. I mean, there's similar, I mean, I want to see those Black History Month all, when I do the work, at the end of the day, as female bodies, we all work the same, and really our needs are the same. The problem is that we were eradicated from our tradition, and so we're having a harder time along with Native Americans. Even they have powwows, and they have their drums, and they have the salmon run. And so we have to find our traditions to bring it back. So, okay, go ahead.
If you have time for one more question.
I just wanted to say that I am a new midwife who is doing homework. And also, just to say that in the realm of the state support, I am a certified nurse midwife, and if you guys know the difference, there's just not a lot of us who are doing homework. And so I am doing all of things like these and learning and reading about the traditions so that I can be effective homework midwife, because I did not really get that training in my program. And I love the community of birth workers that I serve, and thank you, Mama Shafia. I've been following. But I just want to say that some of the laws and some of the regulations are against what we are trying to do. So it's challenging. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So I do want you all know that I'm a midwife. I cannot run a school, but what I've done, I created a doula training called the Full Circle Doula Training. Thank you. And that training is built on the legacy of the 20th century African midwife. So even though we're doulas, we're still learning what these Black midwives did so we can practice it in our doula setting. And also, because I do want to see more Black midwives, you took the training, right? You took the training? In Chicago? Right. Okay. And so the whole goal of the training, besides learning the traditions and be able to help, you're trained to be the postpartum doula combined. But more importantly, you learn how, as I said, to work with the medical model, the midwifery model, and hopefully we have more women who actually become midwives for taking the training. So just know that that is something that I keep available. So it's a short track to get you all on the right track philosophically, with the skills that you can go into midwifery or medicine. You already have it. You have a strong foundation of what the traditions are. So thank you all for coming out.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you, Mama Shafia.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming out. There's still some leftover food. Take it home, eat it. Thanks for everybody checking in online.